So I have 5:30. I'd like to convene this meeting of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District Board of Directors for June 5th, 2025. Jen, would you take roll? Cheers.
President Smalley.
Here.
Vice President Lane. Here. Director Largay.
Here.
And Director Foltz.
Here remotely.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, and there's no one in the room with you, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Do we have any changes to the closed session agenda?
Not
Good.
for me. Nope.
Barbara? Okay. Moving on then, oral communications. We have nobody from the public in the room nor attending online. So with that, I think we can adjourn to the closed session. And Jen, the first item, I'm not going to have you in on that for the general manager discussion. For the rest of the agenda, I expect so. And I expect the general manager discussion to be on the order of 5-10 minutes.
Okay, cool. So I'll just wait.
Just hang around.
Yeah.
Have a go-to meeting.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you, CTV. I'll see you at 6:30.
Great. The directors for the San Lorenzo Valley Water District for June 5th, 2025. Jen, would you take roll again, please?
Yes, Leah is actually going to do that.
Oh, okay, Lee.
President Smalley,
Yes.
Vice President Lane,
Yes.
and Director Largay,
Yes.
and Director Foltz is remote today.
President remotely by himself.
Yes. Okay. So let's see. Reportable actions taken during closed session. We do have one item from the closed session to report, to deliver a report on, and I'd like our general counsel to address that. Barbara?
Yes, thank you. The reportable action is the board agreed that the district agreed to resolve a claim regarding damage caused by a pipe replacement project near 1546 Highland Drive in Boulder Creek. The claim by the property owners is for the amount of $3,327.92, which is the amount that the district agreed to pay the property owners.
Okay.
Point of order. I think we have to do the vote count. Any?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Right. So with that, Jen, would you take a roll call vote on that item then? Or I'm sorry, Leah.
All right. For the vote, President Smalley,
Yes.
Vice President Lane,
Yes.
Director Largay,
Yes.
and Director Foltz.
Abstain.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
We took no actions on the other three items. Changes to the agenda. I would like to pull item 10A, the Department of Water Resources tank replacement discussion. And the reason, during the engineering committee meeting, we discussed the tank replacement efforts that the district is doing, and asked our engineering manager, Garrett, to bring this to the board. However, there's a lot of new information that Garrett provided in the agenda packet with us, and I'd like the engineering committee to be able to spend the time with that instead, and then come back to the board after the engineering committee has had time to review that. So my recommendation is pull it from this evening's meeting. I'd like to hear from the other board member who's on the engineering committee with me, Bob.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that's a great way to go.
Okay. Alina, Brian?
Sounds good to me.
Objections?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Then we will move on to presentations. Uh,
Mm.
with,
Actually, oral com.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. I missed that one. Yes, oral communications. Does anybody from the public want to address the board on an item that is not on this evening's agenda? That is within the purview of the district, while keeping your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Seeing nobody from the public here in the room with their hand up, and seeing nobody attending remotely, wanting to do the same, we will move on then. Okay. Presentations. The item 9A, the dry season stream flow.
Yeah, well, Chelsea Neal from Balance presenting that. And Scott, could you pull up the slides for us?
From the website.
They're linked on the agenda too.
Inflow.
Yes.
We go full screen. Start slideshow. Oh, that could have been one.
It's right there on the top where it says download. You don't get that one over.
It's underneath that window.
I know, I'm trying to get there.
So Chelsea, while he's doing that, why don't you give us a brief summary of what this is, without needing the first slide to talk.
Sure, yeah.
To talk.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm Chelsea Neal. I'm a hydrologist with Balance Hydrologics. We initially began stream gauging. We're doing a study of the streams for flow and temperature monitoring with the district starting in 2013 to 2014. And have been working with the district since that time and sort of refining our flow monitoring to help best meet the district's needs. The initial pilot project that we did was in support of the HCP, and that initial project was sort of a 5-year assessment where you can actually go ahead to the next slide. Thanks. So for the first 5 years, we monitored on 9 different streams, all within different San Lorenzo Valley Water District watersheds to really try to understand all of the surface water resources within your purview. We did a couple additional studies during that time. In 2015, we did an additional stream flow and temperature survey on Boulder Creek. And then in 2016, we took the opportunity, there was a shutdown on the North system. And so we did a pre, during, and post assessment of stream flow and temperature to see how the streams responded when the diversions weren't working, which was, pretty interesting to have that opportunity. After that initial 5 years, we have been continually refining our monitoring program depending on what the district needs. And one of the things that happened was that we decided to split the gauging into 2 different types of gauging. So the first one is our ecological gauging. That's for permit compliance, habitat, and in support of the ongoing conjunctive use studies for the district. Originally, when we split that, we also started doing just dry season monitoring because that's the time when, that's the most critical time for fisheries, is when those flows get really low. So we initially did just 4 streams, the 3 in the north system, Peavine, Foreman, and Boulder Creek, as well as Lompico, which we kept monitoring on Lompico until the forbearance agreement was settled. At this time, post-fire, Peavine is obviously not online anymore, and so we're currently, as of this year, just monitoring Foreman and Boulder Creek for our ecological gauging. The second component is our operational gauging, and there were originally 2 gauges, Clear Creek and Fall Creek. Those gauges are directly used by the district to help manage the diversions. So Fall Creek goes directly to the district's SCADA system. They can see how much flow is being released downstream and then make changes to the operation based on how much flow there is in the creeks. You can go to the next slide. During water year 2023 was obviously a really lots of high flow events back to back. And so both of the gauges on Boulder Creek and Foreman Creek were destroyed during those high flow events. So at the beginning of our water year 2024 monitoring, we did reinstall both of those gauges, and you can see in the images here where the gauges were gone on Foreman Creek. A tree did fall on top of our gauge, and so it's now located just upstream a bit, and you can see the tree downstream. Next slide, please. Water year 2024 was about an average year in terms of rainfall. There was 45 inches of precipitation at the district's office here. That's about 90% of average. And then the mean annual flow at the USGS Big Trees gauge downstream was 160 CFS, so 122% of average. I think it's really interesting to look and see, okay, well, we had slightly less than average rainfall, but we had more than average stream flow. And one thing that we've noted over the many years that we've been observing these watersheds is that there's a multi-year effect of drought and also of large water years, gonzo years, if you will. So water year 2023 was like 140% of average. And we're seeing that lasting impact all the way into water year 2024, where we have increased base flows from water that's being held onto by the aquifer, even though we had slightly less than average rainfall. Let's see here. So this is a plot of the stream flow. It's logarithmic, just to correct your eyes. Boulder Creek is in orange at the top. The season started off with beginning like May and June, our monitoring, a little over 10 CFS, and then it stabilized down to, between 2 and 3 CFS by the end of the monitoring season. And Foreman Creek fluctuated between 0.2 to 0.3 CFS throughout the duration of the monitoring period. Next slide. We also looked at temperature. So this is 7-day forward rolling average. Don Alley developed a 20 degrees Celsius temperature threshold as a guideline of what we'd like to see stream temperatures below. That's not the point of neutrality for steelhead, but it is the point where they start to feel metabolic stress due to warmer temperatures. So that's sort of the threshold that we're looking at, and ideally those stream temperatures are staying below 20 degrees. And they were well below 20 this year. Boulder Creek was about 0.5 degrees Celsius warmer than Foreman Creek. And there is a temperature reversal that happened in October where Foreman Creek becomes warmer than Boulder Creek. This temperature reversal is something that's happened every year since we've been monitoring, where the tributaries become warmer during the wet season. And I think that that's largely due to the influence of groundwater, particularly in Boulder Creek, which helps maintain more constant temperatures throughout the year. Let's see, in previous years, that temperature, in the past few years at least, that temperature difference has been a little bit more. So it's been more on the order of 1 to 2 CFS. And I think that we're seeing, more vegetation growth post-fire that's sort of cooling things off, and we're not seeing as big of a difference. And water year 2024, last summer was also just not as hot as some of our more recent years. Next slide, please. On Fall Creek, we have been gauging on Fall Creek since we started the project back in 2013 to 2014. In 2018, we worked with the district to install a real-time gauge that is when we started reporting directly to the district's data system. As you know, 2023, there was the installation of the new fish ladder on Fall Creek. We worked with a contractor to put totalizers on the flow pipes to make sure that there's still enough bypass flow coming through and sort of keep a running tally for permitting reasons of how much flow there was. We then worked with the contractors to reinstall our stream gauge. So you can see the metal pipes off to the left there. That's where our pressure transducers are. We have a staff plate where we make manual observations of stage. And this is just downstream of where the diversion intake is. And then I included a higher flow. I think this is like 45 CFS from the winter of 2024, just so you can see what it looked like. Yeah, next slide, please. So historically for Fall Creek, the district has requested that we not work up the data. It was purely just an operational tool where it reported directly to the district's SCADA system, but we didn't create a final hydrograph. After talking with Mike Podlick, the fisheries biologist, and some of the staff, recognizing that providing this data is actually a requirement for the permitting of Fall Creek. And so we did work up the data this year and are going to be incorporating that into our annual reporting moving forward for that permit compliance. Since this was an average year during the winter, there is a 1.5 CFS bypass requirement on Fall Creek. And then during the summer months from April to the end of October, there's a 1 CFS. That's what those red dashed lines are. And you can see that throughout the duration of water year 2024, they were above those bypass requirements, flows were. All right, next slide, please. Just to summarize, this gauging program has really provided a quantitative baseline of stream flow and temperature over a wide range of conditions. We've seen extreme drought, we've seen really wet years, and so provided a really great data set of the conditions and helping us to understand the water district's water supplies. Water year 2024 represents an average year followed by a really wet year, which is important as we talked about earlier. Foreman and Boulder Creeks were destroyed during the high flows of 2023 and then reinstalled for water year 2024. Water temperatures remained below that 20-degree 7-day forward rolling average temperature guideline at all of the gauges during water year 2024. The thermal effects from the diversions appear to be slight, and it does not appear that the diversions are impacting stream temperatures. Fall Creek exceeded the bypass requirements for the duration of water year 2024, and the Fall Creek real-time gauge continues to be a valuable asset to the water district. And then just as an update, we're currently in our water year 2025 monitoring season. So both Foreman and Boulder Creek are operational right now, and we're going out to make regular visits, and we're continuing to make regular observations at Fall Creek fish ladder for flow as well. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea. Alina?
I'm not really aware of what you were talking about with the Lompico forbearance agreement. What was that about?
So I'm not completely familiar with the processes, but my understanding was that the district took over the Lompico water system and that whole infrastructure. And so in leading up to that, the district wanted to have as much information as they possibly could on Lompico Creek and the flows that are in Lompico, since there used to be a diversion there, although it's no longer, it hasn't been active in a very long time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that there was a monitoring season range. What dates are we monitoring? What months of the year?
So we go from June until October, November. We typically cut off before the first major storm of the year.
That's all I.
Fine.
So I understand that the reason the monitoring is summer conditions is because that's when the low flows and heat stress could be most adverse to the aquatic environment. Is that right?
Yeah.
And so and then I guess there's three, if I understand correctly, three reasons to do this. One is permit compliance. Another is to have the data needed to do conjunctive use in the future, good management of surface water and groundwater. And then the third is stewardship of our water resources and our watersheds and the aquatic life that occurs there. That's kind of the foundation of it? And on those three scores, I know our community cares a lot about all three of those things. How are we doing from a report card perspective, fulfilling our permit requirements, preparing for conjunctive use, and then stewarding the aquatic resource?
I think the district has been very on top of their management, and throughout our history of working with the water district, there's been a lot of attention to how the diversions are potentially impacting the streams, and it's been nice to see the data reflect that the thermal effects. In some of our more previous reports, we also looked at the percentage decrease of overall flow from Boulder Creek, let's say, from both the Peavine and Foreman diversions. And so that's, you should have access to all of our previous reports, but especially those initial years, we really did a big in-depth look into all of the important components. And now it's more of a let's get the basic information needed while also recognizing that these types of studies take time and money, and trying to find that balance of minimizing the effort and the financial cost for the district in making that happen.
Terrific.
But yeah.
And then in terms of recommendations forward, particularly on when it comes to cost savings and efficiency and things like that, do you have recommendations, or is there work staff might do if when they have capacity, acknowledging they don't have capacity now for much, but as capacity increases, hopefully over the next year, are there items that would be transferable to staff, and would that yield a cost savings, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Potentially, I think it would depend on I think historically the district hasn't had a hydrologist that's comfortable or knowledgeable with going out and taking stream flow measurements. So if you had someone in that capacity, then certainly that, is something that the district could take on. We've pared back a lot from what we initially had done. And I think, for now, just monitoring these few creeks seems to be like the baseline. I think as other systems and diversions come back online, that's going to change things too. Really thinking about what needs to be monitored during those periods and at what locations.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, for historical purposes, when I first came on the board in 2018, I think we got a presentation on this. We'd spent almost $1 million on stream flow monitoring over a 4 or 5 year period, I believe it was. And the results of that at that time were that our impact on the overall watershed was minimal. That is, in terms of temperature, stream flow, and all that. And it sounds to me like, if I'm understanding your presentation correctly, that continues to be the case.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there's probably a data collection that could be continued through getting our updated water rights. What the board had decided, I think a few years ago, was to reduce the scope so that we weren't spending $1 million every few years, down to something that really focused in areas of most criticality. And that's something that perhaps could get another review before going forward with another contract to see which streams we might want to do. Once the water rights are secured, I think there's then another question about making sure that we're covering stream flow requirements. My understanding is that we almost always, if not always, meet our stream flow requirements for Fall Creek historically. Is that correct as well?
Yeah, it is, but I do think that is at times due to the district managing the diversion well. Like if we looked back at that graph of Fall Creek, there was a period in time in October, November, I think, where it got pretty close to that.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that real-time data has proved to be very useful. In the winter,
definitely. definitely. And that's why we agreed to put one on Fall Creek.
Yeah,
But please keep in mind that we are diverting a lot more water out of Fall Creek than we did prior to the fire in 2020. When that was focused just on supporting Felton. Since then, we've operated under emergency, so we've, sent water everywhere out of Fall Creek. My understanding after talking with some people at the county is the district uses about 1% of the water on average that comes out of the San Lorenzo River watershed, more or less. So our overall usage of the water is fairly minimal as well. I did have a question about how far up these streams that we're monitoring would we expect to see fish travel?
that's a great question, and one that's probably better answered by Mike Podlick or Don Alley. Oh, maybe.
I hike often in Fall Creek. I was a good distance up the Bennett Creek side and saw an 8 or 10 inch fish in there several years ago. So
There's miles of high quality habitat
Yes.
up from Fall Creek Fish Slide.
right, there's miles of habitat, but that's the first time I saw fish in there.
I should have focused my question on the north system diversions. How far up those streams would we expect to see fish?
I can answer. So
Sure.
Boulder Creek, they probably all the way up because they get up to even Jameson Creek. As far as Foreman Creek, I think the district takes the position that that is not a stillhead bearing creek, but I would say that you could argue otherwise. But that is the position that I think Mike Podlick takes on Foreman. And I do think historically the Fall Creek diversion has been out of compliance because when I first started here, that was something that was openly talked about with Mike Podlick and Rick Rogers, and it's something that has been corrected, and we've been doing a lot better at that. But several years ago, we were not meeting that bypass requirement.
Yeah, keep in mind there's two bypass requirements, one in Fall Creek and one further downstream at Big Trees, I believe it is. The Big Trees one, we're routinely out of specs on that. The Fall Creek one, much less so over time. Yeah, I was just curious whether or not the fish made it up to any of our diversions on Peavine or contemplated diversion on Peavine since we're restoring it, or on Foreman.
The Peavine would also be considered a non-stillhead bearing creek.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was my understanding as well, but things change, right? So, okay, great, thanks.
Okay, Chelsea, you mentioned the 20C threshold that Don Alley put forth, and it sounds like that's a preference. But we don't have any required monitoring for that, nor permit condition of thou shalt not let it. We've had good stream flows for the last 3 years now. Did we come close to that during some of the drought years?
Oh, yeah, it was exceeded. It has been exceeded.
So the 20C is exceeded occasionally, while we still have sufficient stream flow.
And I haven't seen it exceeded for an extended period of time. It would be like, a couple of days if there's a large, heat event.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just a guideline.
Okay. And to Chris, I did want to follow up on what Brian was saying. When we have additional staff on the environmental side, if there's the opportunity to internalize some of this, the board would be interested in hearing about that as to how that might be done. And I understand we're probably not getting a hydrologist for our environmental, but I would hope that the opportunity for one dedicated staff person to be trained in that would be there.
Yeah, sure. We've worked with various staff on training and,
yes,
could certainly work with you on that.
Okay, so not now, down the line somewhere.
What were the temperature exceeding to?
Oh, like
What was the highest? Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it was, my memory recalls correctly, I think it was like in the 22, so
Mhm.
not, we
Yeah.
weren't seeing like 30-degree
Yeah,
water,
yeah,
but I think
okay.
it was in the low 20s.
I know that the Don Alley, you're saying Don Alley did a guideline, but 20 degrees is, it's a good one to try to stick under, because when you get to 21 to 23, then you start really impacting the fisheries there an extended period of time. So it's not like Don just pulled a number out of thin air. I mean, that's a lot of
Yeah.
NOAA compliance,
Right.
going for that temperature and tagging and
And I
stuff
think it's
like that.
nice too to just have a point of reference, like when we look at stream flow or when we look at temperature, it's like,
Right.
what are we comparing it to? Where, what values are considered good, or where should we be concerned? So
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that's just a good guidance.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the public on this presentation? Seeing none here in the audience, and I see none
Maybe one last.
on, sure. I see none online or remotely, so.
Right. I just want to say thanks so much for coming in and sharing this and for leading this work within the district, Chris. And Balance is a fantastic firm. We're really lucky to have such competent people in our community. So we're not paying exorbitant travel costs from over the hill, et cetera. And it's nice to have this support in our community.
Great,
Okay.
thank you
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thanks, Chris. And our next presentation is the Lockhart shaded fuel break.
Yeah, Angie from the RCD.
Okay.
Scott, do you have that one loaded up?
Hi everyone, my name is Angie Vasconcelos. I'm a Forest Health Project Manager with the Resource Conservation District of Santa Cruz County. You've all probably heard of us, considering we worked with the district on the fish ladder and a couple other recent projects. Yeah, we're a special district. We do a lot of different conservation projects all over the county. We're primarily grant funded. All right, I'm here today to talk about the Lockhart Shaded Fuel Break project, which will be happening soon. Some of it is going to be on district land. Next slide, please. So the Lockhart Shaded Fuel Break is a CAL FIRE grant funded project in 2021. The RCD was awarded the fire prevention grant. And the location of the project is a prominent ridgeline between Zayani Creek and Lockhart Gulch. And the project area spans about 4.5 miles along that ridgeline. And the majority of the project has existing fire road that the project activities will be working off of. Project implementation is slated for July to October, obviously aiming to have everything wrapped up and closed out before the rain comes. The project size is 90 acres in total. There's a few different segments of the project. Some of them we're bidding out separately. About 20 acres of the work is on district land at the Olympia watershed property. And the environmental compliance we use for the project is a streamlined CEQA document called the California Vegetation Treatment Program, also known as the CalVTP. It's a very robust CEQA document, and the RCD is CEQA lead on that, and CAL FIRE is the responsible agency for that. And this is a shaded fuel break, so the main project goals are to decrease fire hazard, to reduce the potential for loss of human life and property, and also to improve the capability of CAL FIRE and other emergency responders to fight fire. So these shaded fuel breaks reduce fuels and moderate fire behavior, thus making them a safe place to fight fire. And ridgelines also moderate fire behavior, so there's a double whammy effect there. And then additionally, there's the co-benefit of forest health improvements. Many of our forests are not healthy due to decades of fire exclusion. So the project activities, while we're not putting prescribed fire on the ground, we are sort of creating that good result of thinning out the forest and creating some gaps and spaces there. Next slide, please. So it was hard to fit this really large project on one map. You can see this is the Olympia watershed property here, and I have another slide that will be more detailed. And the orange polygons are the main treatment areas. You can see it's linear, this is typical of shaded fuel breaks. In the north end, there's a special treatment area that's in some sensitive habitat. And then the teal color there is an access treatment that we scoped out with the project team. So that's going to be a slightly reduced treatment, and that access road is through the Olympia watershed property. The fire road that goes kind of straight up the back through the redwood forest. And there is an additional section that goes between Mount Herman Road and Graham Hill Road that's not pictured here, so we can fit everything. But you can see it essentially runs from Mount Herman all the way up to Weston Road, creating a very robust fuel break. Next slide. And then I wanted to point out to everyone.
Would you mind just going back real quick?
Yeah.
Would you, so the towns that are visible, would you just name the towns that are in proximity? I think that's Felton on the left, and I don't know if we get into Scotts Valley.
Will Hollow Road coming down, East Lane.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So this this fuel break is right between Diane, which is the community of Felton, and then also the community of Scotts Valley. So this project is really gonna make those communities safer, as well as everyone in this area, because they can stop a fire. There is a pretty significant history of ignitions on both sides of the shaded fuel break. And this project is a really high priority for CAL FIRE and the city of Scotts Valley, the fire departments of Zanyani, Felton, and Scotts Valley. Will really help benefit the communities and make everything safer in the future. Thank you. All right. And this slide zooms in on the Olympia watershed property, which I'm sure you're caring mostly about. So the purple dash is where RCD with CAL FIRE funds and with the water district with Chris, we completed about 60-acre fuels reduction and habitat improvement project, and that was in the Sandhills area of Olympia. So the entire shaded fuel break project is outside of the Sandhills. There's no sensitive habitat or rare plants down in there, but I just wanted to show you how those kind of relate to one another and build off one another, making the entire property more fire resilient. And I'll talk about the treatments on the next slide. Okay, so the project, the scope. So the main scope of work is to remove the ladder fuels, which are the small fuels that kind of connect the forest floor and the canopy. So these are the fuels that really increase fire behavior. They make everything hotter. They bring fire into the canopy of the forest where it can really no longer be effectively suppressed. So we'll be removing select trees under 8 inches in diameter. Not removing all trees under 8 inches in diameter. We work with we're working with Ag Resource Consulting, who are registered professional foresters, to advise on all these treatments. And we make sure that we are maintaining the diversity and a diverse size and age class of trees to benefit the forest. Also on the district property, we worked with Chris and the district consulting forester they reviewed those specs and made sure that everything was acceptable, and they gave us some feedback that we're incorporating into the project. Another major component is to remove dead and dying and hazardous trees. So dead trees obviously heat up faster in a fire than live trees. So getting those down on the ground and processed will improve the fire resiliency. Limbing trees up to 8-foot heights, and then over all the access roads up to 15-foot height, and that is to increase access for engines, of course. And again, this is really just disconnecting the canopy from the forest floor and creating space so that fire cannot blaze through, that it will slow down. And then processing dead and down debris to increase composition and removing select woody shrubs. Again, we retain a lot of shrubs for habitat for wildlife. We have a whole list of specific species that we retain, and our staff will go out and actually flag ahead of the contractor what we want to retain. And that's the majority of the scope. And then pictured here is a boom mounted masticator that is probably one of the key pieces of equipment that will be on site during the project. We're anticipating having like a 20-foot arm that can grind vegetation. And this is a really common practice in shaded fuel breaks and forest management. It's very cost effective. If you were to do all this work by hand, you would probably double the cost and only be able to achieve about half of the acres, and that's best case scenario. This method, people always ask, why aren't you just rearranging the fuels and putting them on the ground? Yes, definitely. But again, this is about moderating fire behavior. Taking everything out of the system with pile burning or some other method would be ideal. But again, it comes down to cost effectiveness, and that costs a lot more. And then producing smoke is a whole ordeal as well. And again, with the dead trees, we're not removing all dead trees. We retain some for wildlife. And then we'll also be we have a consulting biologist who's going to be going out and doing nesting bird surveys and bat roost surveys ahead of our cruise to make sure none of those resources are harmed, and they'll be flagged out and mapped for the cruise. Next slide, please. Okay, well, that was my last slide. Let me see if I'm forgetting anything. I guess additionally, this project is out to bid. We held the bid walk last week and we had 11 companies show up. We're opening bids June 23rd, and we expect to get a few that are within budget and get this project going by mid-July.
Good.
Any questions?
Okay, we will have some questions. I don't
Yeah.
know all of what they are yet. Okay, Brian?
Great, thanks for the presentation. Maybe just as a word of introduction, I should disclose that the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County, where I work, has multiple properties subject to the same shaded fuel break project. We're your neighbors to we're our neighbors to the south, and have an easement to the north that will have across them maybe a mile of shaded fuel break on them. How much is the district paying for this treatment of their property, of our property?
The district is not paying anything really. The district did not commit to match, but we have been working with Chris and the forester, so they're donating their time to the cause to make sure that everything is acceptable to the district. And yeah,
great.
Cal Fire's paying for it all.
What's the project budget?
We have about $650,000 for implementation. And then we had some additional funds for consultants, and then of course, money for RCD staff time. And we are hoping to put all that implementation money out on the ground. Like I said, there's some additional acres that weren't in this PowerPoint. There's about 16 additional acres that we're bidding out separately due to their different locations and sensitive habitats.
Terrific. And so the RCD is a special district.
Mm-hmm.
I know Measure Q just passed, which will give some additional funding to the RCD. But I wonder if you know the annual budget of the RCD, approximately.
Oh wow, I should
maybe
know
to
that.
the nearest million or something like that.
I think the annual budget that includes all the grants.
Yeah, includes all the grants.
I think is somewhere around 5 million. No, I don't know, my financial advisor
Sure.
would be mad right now.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
And I think that like last year from the county and all other regular sources, non-grant sources, the RCD received, I think it was less than $100,000.
Yeah, I want to say it's in the ballpark of $60,000 annually, so very few taxes, but the grants really make the work happen. And then again, the partners really make the work happen. And the other project that I mentioned that we did at Olympia just last year, the district was extremely helpful on that, matching their time and helping with the forester.
So that's really remarkable to me. So $60,000 of county tax revenue that the district leverages to bring in about 5 million grant-funded projects a year, give or take.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Alina?
Yeah, so you were saying you were masticating all the down trees and debris. I just wanted to put it out there. If you do have bigger logs, they are worth quite a bit of money. I know that Santa Clara Valley Water District is looking for logs for restoration projects. Just, if there is anything to keep funding yourself by selling any of that. So
Are they purchasing large wood for stream?
they're really struggling to get
is?
large. Santa Clara Valley Water
Oh, okay.
District. Like they're really struggling, like, cause they accidentally quoted a bunch of jug fir, and you don't want to do jug fir for restoration. So they're looking for, like redwood or oak or something like that, at least arm length or arm size. So
Yeah,
something to kind of think about, and and they're buying and paying money. So just something to
Yeah.
think about. Yeah, and also just kind of, I like to say this, I've said this to Chris, I'm really big about biochar and trying to incorporate that into everything, sequestering that carbon instead of releasing it, and also helps hold a lot of water into our soils around here because we have, a really flashy system. So, but yeah, thank you for this. This was a wonderful presentation. And I've seen up at the San Vicente, like how that saved so many of the houses up there, and this is just absolutely necessary. So thank you for tackling this.
yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'll look into the log distribution with Santa Clara Valley Water.
Yeah, they're paying logs are expensive, so
Yeah, they're expensive to ship.
yeah, and if it's something kind of close, trying to
Yeah.
get
I have a note related to that. When we were doing the Olympia broom removal, we had excess wood that we were looking to do something with, like donate as firewood or something like that. And based on our admin policies, I believe it was, we were not able to really do anything with the wood. Our best, I think we could only like sell it at auction or something like that. So
Huh.
that's something that we could maybe look at long term is
I think we
for
could.
future
I
projects.
think we could. I
Yeah.
said I think we could. Yeah.
So I just want to throw that out
Okay.
there on the same thread.
yeah.
Bob, any questions, comments?
No, just on Chris's comment, though, there is a reason for that. So in terms of making sure there aren't any sort of weird insider deals or anything like that going on with district assets. So be very careful about creating any carve outs on that, so that you don't have even the appearance of impropriety, which is why those policies are in place in the first place. I guess as long as the grant funding continues, this is projects that definitely need to be done. What is the long-term plan for maintaining this effectively fire break over, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a great question. So the grant is ending in March 2026. And we have held some of those implementation funds back, just a very small amount, about enough for 4 weeks of one person, to do some maintenance. But really there's not a fund for maintenance of this shaded fuel break or other shaded fuel breaks throughout the county that have been implemented using grant funds. So we've been working with our partners and especially CAL FIRE to try to work up some sort of maintenance plan. Monitoring is the easy part. You kind of can see when it needs to be maintained, and a lot of these projects need maintenance 5 to 7 years if they're more forested and shaded, or more frequently like 3 to 5 years if there's more sun. CAL FIRE does have a remote controlled masticator that we were hoping to get out and maintain these projects. It only takes one person and not an operator, so it's a lot easier than a big piece of equipment. But yeah, that's a question that still remains, but we are not just leaving the project behind and forgetting about it after March 2026. we're gonna try to work with everyone to figure out long-term maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, that would be good. I mean, my experience with projects like this is that with the grants, they're short term. They don't address the longer term issue of maintenance of these kinds of things. So I fully appreciate the challenges you're going to face coming up with funding to be able to do that. Things grow pretty quickly in our area, particularly when we have good rainfalls. And it would be a shame for this effort to effectively be regrown back within a few years and have to spend all that money all over again.
Absolutely. We've also, another free resource is the CCC, the California Conservation Corps Forestry Corps. So it's a state funded hand crew. And you have to get on their schedule about a year in advance because they're in very high demand, but they don't cost anything. So I think both RCD and the district have already used the Corps, but that would be another good resource for maintenance.
Well, nothing is free. It costs somebody. It may cost the California taxpayers, but at some point, you know, when you have something that's free, there's an unlimited demand for it. And so that is the challenge of how all that gets managed and the like. I'm not one to depend upon the kindness of strangers for maintenance. You kind of have to bring that into an ongoing maintenance budget by whoever's responsible for this. And if part of this is on the district land, and that's something the district may have to step up and do over the long term, if we're going to sustain this kind of project. We've talked before about this with the neighbors, with their broom. We might clear broom, but if the neighbors aren't clearing broom, where do we actually go with things on that? So, the whole policy behind this, get really excited about doing it. And I think it's great, but we have to look at the maintenance part of it as part of our ongoing responsibility to this if we're going to take on this kind of task at all.
Okay, but the question that I had, you've addressed on what's the district paying for this? Some staff time
Yeah.
to oversee in the areas where you're doing work on district property. I think that's a win for the district. So with that then, any comments from the general public on this? I see none online. I see none here in the room. So Angie, thank you for the presentation. Okay, thanks. Moving on then to new business, item 11A. We have a general manager employment agreement in front of us this evening for Jason Lillian. And Jason is here with us this evening. So I'd like Jason to introduce himself to us so that the public can begin to see Jason.
Good evening. As Mark said, I'm Jason Lillian. I've been in the water industry now for 26 years. Moving up here from the high desert of California, so it's a much different environment, but I want to thank the board for this opportunity. I'm excited. I want to thank the staff for the kindness and welcome that you have all given me. And I'm very excited to learn from all of you. And I'm excited to bring what talents I have and tackle the challenges that we're going to face. And
Okay.
Here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. I'd like to go through the employment agreement first to see what questions we may have on that. But a couple of other things that I wanted to point out about Jason. I think he was a bit humble and not going into any more on his resume. He's been working for Indian Wells Valley Water District for, is it the entire water district?
Yeah.
For the entire 25 years or for the last 18?
Yeah.
Okay. And most recently for the last 12 or 13 years, he's been the operations manager for that district. So he brings a wealth of knowledge from that perspective. He also has a bachelor's degree in IT.
Yeah.
That makes me smile.
Yeah, so I actually finished my degree while working for the water district. Had to quit school when I was younger for lack of funds, but made a commitment to always go back and finish it. So I did in 2005, got my degree in information technology. I specialize in database programming. But if anybody needs any help.
Okay. Okay. So before I solicit questions on the agreement, I did want to point out one thing, and it's a change in what the agreement says on the annual leave hours. I made a mistake in what I had sent out, which Jason looked at. And instead of 360 hours on an annual basis for annual leave, 200 is what I've discussed with Jason as a change. That's the only change that I wanted to reflect on in the agreement. So with that, I proposed that change, and Jason, I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak to that.
Yeah, so when you called me and asked for the change, 200 is what I'm currently accruing now, and so that's what I wanted to say at. So
Okay, all right, thank you. Questions on the employment agreement from other board members? Alina?
No, I think we pretty much already covered and gone over this. So with that adjustment, yeah, I think that it's fine and welcome.
thank you.
Okay, Brian?
I'm very comfortable, enthusiastic, in fact, about proceeding. Looking forward to it.
Okay, Bob?
Yes, and likewise, Jason, thank you very much for agreeing to make a big move from the desert to the opposite of the desert. And I really hope that your time here and the challenges and skills that you bring to the district will help us achieve the goals that we have, both in operating the district as well as getting urgently needed capital infrastructure built as quickly as possible.
Okay. With that, any comments from the general public before I make a motion on this? Seeing nobody here in the room and nobody attending remotely with their hand up, then I'll make a motion that the board appoint Jason Lillian as the general manager and approve the attached employment agreement with the one change that I noted earlier. So,
Second.
okay.
Could I make sure that I wanted to ask a question? Do we also need to authorize you to sign that, Mark?
It's already part of the agreement, but
Okay,
it's shown on the agreement.
okay, great. Thanks.
Jason and the board president, me.
Yeah, okay.
So, okay.
For a vote.
Leah, did you take? Yes.
Vice President Lane,
Yes.
Director Lady,
Yes.
and Director Foltz.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you all. I'm excited.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Moving on to item 11B, the budget and the 5-year CIP adoption. Heather, are you covering this one?
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Get everything out of the way. All right. Good evening, board. Heather Ipoletti, financial advisor with Regional Government Services and consultant to the district. The item before you is the proposed budget for the biennial period of fiscal year 2025-26 and fiscal year 2026-27. Let's see if I can, there you go. The proposed actions tonight are to adopt a resolution approving the budget for fiscal years 25-26 and 26-27, and to adopt a resolution approving the authorized position schedule. On June 15th, I presented the entire budget. The changes from the 615 presentation are I removed the increased revenue of $17,000 per year for the new mobile services lease. I eliminated the vacant field services and systems coordinator position. And I added 19 million in debt financing over 3 years to fund capital projects.
And Heather, let me pause for a minute. I think you meant changes from the May 15th presentation.
You are right. May 15th. Thank you very much.
June 15th hasn't occurred yet.
You know, I'm psychic. May 15th. Thank you, President Smalley. And the budget process, we have done a significant amount of outreach for this budget process. In March, there was a Budget and Finance Committee meeting with a Budget 101. And in addition to that, there was also other committee meetings related to the CIP. In April, there was a Budget and Finance Committee presentation of the entire budget. In May, there was 2 meetings on the budget. The first meeting, May 1st, with the non-capital presented. And on May 15th, the entire budget, CIP and summary were presented. And then tonight is the proposed budget adoption. The total revenue proposed in 25-26 non-capital is a little over 16 million. In 26-27, it is 16.7 million. The revenue assumptions, I'm going to review one more time, just in case people are watching that did not see the previous meetings. I took for water sales and flat rate charges, I took the 24-25 consumption, assumed no change in customer base with an annual 7% increase in rates. Sewer charges, very similar to the water, no change in customer base, annual increase of 4% in rates. Property tax, based on a conservative 4-year history, a 5% annual increase. Assessment districts, the projections agree with a consultant prepared annual report, and the Lempinko Assessment District is going to end after 25-26. Investment earnings were conservative with the decline in the interest rate earned, assuming no invested unspent bond proceeds at this point. Mobile service fees, the current lease has a 3% increase. Rental income, both leases are renegotiated and continue through 6/30/27. And then rent increases in accordance with the current contract. One change from last year's budget is the increased funding for the low income discount program allows for a $5 per month annual increase in benefit and increased funding for 30 additional participants. And then as mentioned before, I included 19 million in debt issuance proceeds over a 3-year period. Operating expenses are for fiscal year 25-26, 10.35. And in 26-27, the proposed expenses are a little over 11 million. Salary and wages per MOU terms with annual increases to top step. New employees start at step 4. A COLA increase as of January 1, 26 of 5%, 3% as of January 1, 27. Assumed vacant management positions to be filled in early 25-26. No increase in staffing level. pension in accordance with the CalPERS annual valuation report. No change to the organization chart from fiscal year 24-25, except for eliminating the vacant field services and systems coordinator position. And important note, the compensation study and any negotiations related to that are not included in this budget. When that is determined and agreed upon, any budget amendment related to that will have to come after tonight. Overtime and standby wages, I used a 4-year average. And then operational budgets are budgeted for specific item based on the department, what the department provided me, or an increased 3 to 5% adjustment inflation.
Heather, can I ask a question about that?
Please do.
So the COLA increase of 5%, I think that exceeds the inflation rate for the year, implying to me that there's some provision for compensation study to be accommodated within that increase. Maybe I'm misunderstanding things.
No, it's okay. But I when I spoke with the interim general manager at the time, that is the assumptions. In the MOU, it does give a calculation for the COLA. And he said to assume 5% for January 1 of 26 and 3% for January 1 of 27. That doesn't mean that's what the COLA will be. Those were the assumptions that I was provided. That does not assume anything related to the compensation study. That is purely the existing MOU as it is now and the assumptions I was provided.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for asking the question and allowing me to clarify. The capital improvement program, the funding over the 2-year period, 25, a pinch over 25 million between grants, debt funding, fire surcharge. Fire surcharge will be used in full at the end of 26-27, and then some what I'm going to call unrestricted funds. In summary, what you have here on the screen is a 5-year projection of your working capital being current assets minus current liabilities. Those numbers, change in working capital, are then presented here, starting with that June 30th actual working capital, June 30th of 24 actual working capital per the financial statements, taking into consideration the annual change in working capital through June 30th of 30, with an estimated ending of working capital of almost 6 million. It is important, and that's why I put it on the slide in big bold letters. This does not take into consideration reserves. This is purely working capital. And so if we were to use our current reserve policy, I'd say that your working capital at the end, minus that 14 million, there would be very little unrestricted funds at June 30th of 30 at this point. That actually concludes my presentation. Actually, let me back up a minute. The proposed actions tonight are twofold. Let's get to this. The first is a resolution approving the budget for the fiscal years 25, 26, and 26, 27. The second, approving the authorized position schedule. I want to note why I'm proposing the authorized position schedule, where, to my knowledge, the district has not done that before. By adopting that authorized position schedule, it's really clear what positions are included in the budget. And it sets, I'd say, a boundary or limitations for what the general manager can do without coming back to the board. They cannot, let's say, give your clerk, your board secretary, a raise to the finance manager. Well, actually, let me put this. actually bad example, but I'm not very creative tonight. I apologize. I guess my point is they cannot promote someone to a position that is not already on that authorized position schedule without coming back to the board. And I think that is an important control mechanism I'm recommending that the district implement by adopting this resolution. And if in the future the board chooses to change their org chart, add a position, change a position, it's very easy to rescind a resolution and adopt a new resolution. So I wanted to go ahead and explain that process since it is a new recommendation and the district has not done that in the past. And with that, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Questions? Why don't we start with you, Bob?
Yeah, I'll just be really brief because a lot of them are the same as at the last presentation. Heather, I don't have any, I can't, there's no criticism or coaching or anything like that with the assumptions, the numbers that you make and all that. This has more to do with board policy. And this budget continues to reflect the board kicking the can down the road on getting its operating expense and capital projects numbers in line with reality, one way or the other. I do not like passing budgets that show a capital project that's simply unsupported by the reality of what we can do, what we can borrow, given that the operating and non-operating margins, when they combine together, decline fairly precipitously over a 3-year period, let alone over the 5-year period of the capital projects that you're putting together. I also oppose the notion of having different durations on operating and capital budgets. One feeds into the other relative to what debt you can sustain, and therefore they really should be the same. At the end of the day, the capital projects that are listed here simply cannot be implemented to the level that's being proposed, and certainly not to the level that is critically necessary in order to get the district's infrastructure programs back on track. The only way to do that is to address the issue about your operating and non-operating margins, or as you call it, net before capital. There are only a few options to do that. Sell more water, which no one wants to do in a conservation area. Support more building and development, but we're designated a no growth area by the county. We can continue to think that we'll rely on California and federal taxpayers to pay for our capital projects through grants. As long as we can get them, that's great. But at some point, the gravy train will run out. We can control the rate of increase of our operating expenses to something inflation plus some amount, as opposed to what we're currently doing, which is multiples of inflation. Or we can continue to fall behind in capital projects, which has been what we've done almost for the last 30 years. The only rational option available to the board is to raise rates to the level required to support both operating expenses increasing at multiples of inflation and the capital projects that the board says it wants to do. Those rates are higher than the current rates that we have, and probably significantly higher, maybe in the order of 25 to 30% higher as of today, let alone what would happen into the future. I will oppose this budget for all of the reasons I described earlier at the last meeting, as well as this meeting. It is not a rational budget. It does not reflect reality in terms of board policy around capital projects and what we can fund. And it continues to assume wildly optimistic, in my opinion, outcomes relative to operating expenses and what we can do, given that we are going into and haven't finalized yet labor negotiations. So I still would ask the board to consider going back to Raftellus once all of the labor negotiations are done and saying, what rates do we actually need to have, as opposed to what was in their bogus report? What rates do we need to have in order to support the capital projects that we have listed here, given operating expenses appear to continue to increase at, let's say, 7, 6, 8% going forward? It is critical to do that. Otherwise, at the end of this 2-year process, we're going to look back as we did on the last 2 years and say, why can't we get any capital projects done? These are brutally hard truths, but ones that the board should confront. And if it doesn't, it is doing the community a disservice.
Okay. Questions from other board members? Alina?
Yeah, so I assume we're looking at Exhibit A when we're talking about approving the org chart.
The attachment that's the approved, the authorized position schedule.
Yeah, the authorized position listing.
Yes.
Well, on that, I thought we had some of those part-time people that were there because we didn't have a general manager. So I have the question about that, and is that's getting being made a permanent position from here on out?
We're not going to ask Leah.
No, I'm not asking Leah. I'm kind of looking towards the screen of Heather. I guess Heather.
I'm sorry. What part-time position are you referring to? I apologize. I am assuming that all vacant positions will be filled early in the next fiscal year. Right now you have for your finance manager, you're paying consultant costs. There is no position on the books. So included in the finance budget, there is not increased consultant costs because I'm assuming a finance manager will be hired. Okay. Right now you have a employee in a position, I'd say acting as your operations manager. In this budget, it assumes he goes back to his original position and an operations manager is hired. Okay. I'm assuming that Jen Torres will go back to her original position as of July when the new general manager starts. So I don't believe there are part-time positions there that are filling vacant positions. So if there is, or I may have misunderstood you.
Okay, well, there's like I don't know what the title of I guess Leah's position that's in here, but I do see the field customer service representative is part-time. I didn't know if that was.
Yeah, that's a meter reader essentially.
Oh, okay.
And so we don't have enough meter readers and work to do to have a full-time person, but we need them for a part-time position. Leah is here only temporarily because of a maternity leave situation.
Okay, so it's not included. I didn't know what that part-time one was on there. Okay.
Yeah, that part-time is purely it is, I'd say it's a permanent part-time, if I may call it that, because again, we don't have enough work for a full-time person, but we do for a part-time person.
Okay, I'm just making sure we know exactly what we're voting on there.
I
Because also
appreciate that.
the admin committee also did make a recommendation last meeting for an additional position too, so which hasn't come to the board yet. So that's not included, I'm seeing. So
and that would need to be a budget amendment at a future meeting.
Okay, all right. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Brian?
I don't have questions, but I would just like to make a couple remarks.
Okay.
Which is that I think this is a good budget. I think this is an important budget to support and get this team kind of back in action. I think the water district has been under-resourced from a staffing perspective, kind of fighting with one hand tied behind its back with a huge raft of projects to get done and so much churn and vacancies that the grant writing has gotten behind we have senior staff filling the gaps of general managers and struggling for want of an in-house finance director. And what I hope with this budget is by investing in the personnel of the district, we'll be able to rebuild the team, the A-class team that we should have here, and that they will then be able to deliver on the very substantial inventory of projects that need to get done. I think the budget is optimistic in how quickly staffing up can happen and how quickly project implementation can roll forward. And I think that that's okay to be optimistic. I understand that the budget has timing issues with relation to securing debt to pay for capital projects, and that it does not presume, it makes some assumptions about when the debt would be, for budgeting purposes, when it would be secured. But the intention is to not secure any debt until those projects are actually ready to go, so that we don't have timing issues or significant loans costing us interest without projects being built with them. And I think that that's the right way to go. So at any rate, that's what my thoughts are on the budget. If I got anything wrong, please correct me, Heather.
I believe you did just fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have several questions. On page 85 of the agenda packet, you refer to the new debt issuance of 19 million.
Yes.
But then on one of the other tables, I see the debt financing, I guess that's for the next 2 years of
Correct.
16 and a half.
Correct.
Does our rate structure support debt financing of up to 19 million?
It does.
Okay, all right. And when?
Actually, may I preface that, please? Sorry.
Sure.
Instead of such a direct answer. In July, as requested by the board, the financing team will bring back options, and we'll also listen to the board about what the board would like to do. And at that point, they'll be running numbers. And they'll then tell us whether it can be 19 million or not, or whether it can only be 16.5 based on the work that was done at this point a year and a half ago. It is my understanding that it will support 19 million.
Okay, so the July timing that you're pointing out as to beginning that process for the debt finance. I wasn't aware that we have plans to do that.
That is my plan if it's the board's wish.
Okay, all right. Other questions that I have on page 95, the capital improvement plan is overly optimistic for a couple of the major ticket items that we anticipate completing. In particular, with the information that Garrett provided on the tanks project, which we're not talking about tonight, but we'll talk about later in the engineering committee meeting. I don't believe that we can complete tanks, specifically the Redwood Park tank, the Echo tank, by June 26th. And that's the way I read the capital improvement plan to be showing, is having those complete by that time frame. But
may I clarify that? Sure. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting and I don't mean to. I just want to make sure that accurate information is out there. It's important when you go to when this board approves a contract, it's very important that 100% of that contract be included in the budget at that time.
Okay.
So
So
the
if we were-
assumption for 25-26 is not necessarily that it'll be completed, but that you'll get under contract at that point. In the end, there may need to be some budget carryover into the years, but
Mhm.
you'll to enter into an agreement, you have to have 100% of the budget approved by the board before that agreement can be approved. That is,
Okay.
so
Okay.
that's a little, yeah.
So if we got a contract in place with contractors by May of next year
26,
of
yes.
26, then what you're showing
is
there
accurate.
is correct. Okay. Well, pending further discussion in the engineering committee meeting, I'll hold off on comments about that. And likewise on Peavine, the replacement of that water pipeline, I am suspicious that we could get that completed by June 26th. But if we started by June 26th, that's where you're showing the money for that. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
And we have two separate resolutions here rolled into the same motion. And I wanted to comment on the authorized position schedule. I don't see that matches the current org chart that we have. And from my perspective, the org chart is easier for me to understand the number of staff in the various departments, the positions that we have, and where individuals fall. So I want to make a recommendation that we defer on that resolution for the authorized position schedule. We've known that these are authorized positions in the past, but I believe more informally, that we've never put this out with a budget. I don't think that we should necessarily continue to do that informally, but I'd like to come back at a subsequent meeting, talk about this authorized position schedule in conjunction with the org chart that the admin committee has reviewed, or budget and finance have reviewed, but so that the board can look at both of those together and say, yes, this is what we should be doing, or wait, what about this? So, but I'm putting that out there simply as one member of the board. So with that, those are the questions, comments that I have. And I see that Bob, you've got your hand up. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Yes, I do.
There is another thing I wanted to comment on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And Mark, your initial question to Heather is exactly the fatal flaw that this board is falling into. You're looking at an operating budget of 2 years and a capital budget of 5 years and a rate increase that goes 5 years. These are not all aligned. If you look at the capital budget that is attached to this, we're telling the community that we're going to do between $38 and $47 million worth of capital expenditures over the course of the next 4 years. 6 million less if we drop out Lion, which is the next item on the agenda. The rate increase can only support 19 because your operating margins, non-operating and operating margins drop over time. Therefore, you're looking at somewhere around a $20 million shortfall that cannot be made up in any other way other than the kindness of strangers. That is, we get more grants for things, which we may or may not do. And I can tell you, as grants get more competitive, they're going to go towards disadvantaged communities, of which we are not. None of our communities are disadvantaged. Or you're going to have to do one of my other options here that I went through. It is short-sighted to say, oh, well, we can, borrow 19 million and therefore everything's hunky-dory. It's not. We're misleading our community here with what we can do over the course of the rate increase that was recently passed.
and I did want to follow up on your comment of that, Bob, so that the rest of the board understands also. After Bob made the suggestion about having Ref Telus go back and look at rates again, after we go through the employee negotiations and have that factored into this as to what the rate structure would have to be, how much of an increase. We asked Ref Telus that, and they came back with, was it 12,000 that they were asking for? I made the suggestion to have you, Bob, follow up with Ref Telus to see if your vision of what they should do versus their vision of what they was any. I don't know whether you were able to do that or not.
Let me come off that. Searching in my email, unless there's a new thread, I only got a message back to Jen saying it would be great to do that. I don't know if I have the contact person, but regardless, 13K, whether it's 13K or 8K or 10K, to me is minimal dollars relative to getting, for once, a clear understanding of what's necessary to do the capital projects that are on the list in the proposed budget.
Right.
Okay. It is so small. I mean, I would ask them, gee, it seems like this is just plugging in a slightly different number in your spreadsheet, right? Yeah. Because it doesn't seem like it would take that long.
Right.
I did a back of the envelope calculation and came up with about a 30% increase in rates. Maybe 35% based on whatever, assumptions you have around the actual capital projects. But it's completely immaterial to the overall goal of getting this board with a true understanding of what it's going to take to really fund these projects on this list, assuming we're going to do nothing about operating expenses other than say we can't control them.
Okay, but to your point of what rate structure would we need to support this? I think it'd be appropriate. Would you put together a memo, Bob, for us? Kind of outlining your vision on this, and we could attach that most recent quote that we got from Ref Telus on this. If you agreed that that's an appropriate level. Or if you were thinking that it's back of the envelope and it's really should be 3,000 on their effort. But I think that there's, your point is valid. We're not looking at reality here with our current rate structure and where we are with a 5-year plan. So that's
I mean, Mark, I'm happy to invest my time if it's going to lead to a positive outcome. I haven't heard any notion of supporting that revisiting of the process from other board members. If there's no appetite for doing it, I'm not going to take my time to put all that together.
Right. Well, I didn't respond after the last board meeting to that because I wanted to see what Ref Telus came back with. If it was something on the 4-figure number, I would have been encouraged, to just have staff go do that. But when it got 13,000.
Keep in mind that's below the general manager's authorization.
Right. I fully understand that, but I wanted to understand better what the goal for this was, or what the so I'm willing to consider that. But you're saying you want to know the appetite for the other board members.
I'd like there to be a consensus in the board that, hey, this is something we want to look into to see whether or not our what rate structure would be necessary to support the projects that we have on the capital projects list through the end of the rate increase process. If there's no appetite for it, then we'll just continue doing what we've done for the last, 20, 30 years.
With the understanding that I don't know that there's the appetite at this point to go out for another rate increase. But if we don't know, to your point, what the rates would have to be to support, in particular, the current capital plan that we're maybe dreaming about getting done here, are we fooling ourselves?
Well, and let me be very, very clear about this. The capital project plan has up to, depending on what duration you want to go, $30 to $40 million. If we can borrow 19, and let's say that that is in fact the case, we got to drop $20 million worth of projects off that budget, period. So that means a whole lot of things that aren't going to get done. A lot of people potentially that won't be happy, like the Felton Heights folks that have been waiting for their tank for a long time.
Yes.
And all the rest of it. So this
Agreed.
is something that we need to be really clear with the community about what we can do given the money that we have.
Okay.
And where we choose to spend it, which right now is about the calculations I did, about 80% of the rate increase is going to go towards operating expenses.
So Bob, you've asked a question. Do the other board members have interest in seeing this, to your point, or the appetite for that? So let me ask them now. Brian?
I am happy to consider anything that you put forward, Bob, especially in writing. I have a hard time keeping track of the math you're throwing out on the fly, and would be grateful for the opportunity to read it and consider it, with my own, with the budget at hand and a spreadsheet, so I can figure out how you're reaching your conclusions. You've put a lot of thought into this, and I have a lot of respect for your analysis. When it comes to questions of the goals of the district, and I view this budget, frankly, as goals. This is what I understand the staff are striving for. I think it is a set of stretch goals. I think it's principally a set of stretch goals because staff are under-resourced and don't have the capacity to advance these projects, to manage the consultants, to do the design work themselves, to get the permits, to keep the schedule that would be necessary for these projects to happen on the dates that are shown, even with the 11-month grace period that may be under these contracts. But I'm certainly happy to look at budget analysis that suggests that a rate increase may be the main strategy. However, as far as investing in consultant expenses and doing a rate study, that's a whole nother question. I also think that you have very pessimistic assumptions about the capacity of staff to raise grant funding. They raised very substantial grant funding when they were spending their time doing it, and have not had the resources to even spend their time doing the grant writing recently. And so I think we have a lot to learn as time unfolds with regard to this budget. As far as this budget representing some commitment to the community about what we will accomplish during this period, if we need to put the word aspirational in our minutes, we should put it in our minutes, because I think that would be honest with the community. But I would gladly read anything that any member of this board writes.
The question that I think Bob is putting to us is, are we as a board interested in seeing what he's advocating for? Is what would our rates need to be given the capital improvement plan that we have? And
I'm very interested in that analysis and the associated assumptions.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Alina?
I think that would be interesting to look at. I don't want to go back into an entire new rate study. We just did that. And it seemed.
And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's what Bob is proposing now.
No, of course not.
Right. It's bringing a reality perspective, I believe, with if we're not willing to go increase rates, here's what we can do total capital over the next 5 years. So the two don't align. So
I mean, the other part of this too is if these are aspirational budgets, then, I mean, again, we're still not giving the community a real clear view of what it is we're gonna do. And I think if we're going to take money from our community, as we do, that we owe it to them to be something more than aspirational.
So Bob, let me just clarify the way I look at it and the way I'm using the word aspirational. We've got, the CIP project list here. How many projects? 30 projects. I'm quite certain that not all of those will be accomplished, but I am confident that staff will do their best to accomplish as many of these as possible. And the discovery of what is possible remains to be seen. And hopefully this coming year, there will actually have the staff to do it. And absent that staffing, absent the capacity to get any of these projects really up and running and some momentum here, I don't think it's realistic to ask staff to say what can or cannot be accomplished, because they've been hobbled with the lack of leadership for 3 or 4 years now. And so that's what I'm referring to. And I think we should approve this budget and encourage staff to go forward and get as much as this done as possible. It was very clear in the election in the fall that the community voted overwhelmingly to invest, not cut the fire charge, not vote for candidates who wanted to be short on investment. The community voted overwhelmingly to invest in our infrastructure and not be shortchanging the community by trying to save a dime.
And what I'm telling you is that you're setting staff up right now for not being able to achieve it because the board's not delivering the money that the staff needs for capital projects. That is the issue. It isn't an issue whether the staff can implement. I'm sure that they can. The issue is the proposed capital budget over that multi-year period is 30 to 40 million. The debt financing that our current rate structure can support is about 19. Where are you going to deliver the other 20 million to staff so that they actually can do the projects? So that is something that the board has never answered.
So there is interest from the board, Bob. You've asked me. Yep, there is interest in continuing this discussion, but at the same time, I think we're faced with the have a budget in place for the new fiscal year. So I want to continue the discussion, but to what Brian was saying, I want to see your thoughts in writing. So a simple 1 or 2 pages of memo to put this in front of us then to outline what you're thinking on this. And if it truly is your back of the envelope and we don't go back out to Reftalis, okay.
So what you're saying here is you're going to go ahead and pass a budget that shows we're spending 30 to 40 million in capital when we don't have the funds to support that. There's no vision as to how we support that.
That is correct.
We would be better off drawing a line at 19 million, which would mean zeroing out 29, 30, 28, 29, 27, 28, and half of 26, 27, and saying that's what's going to get done. That's 19 million.
Right.
So the reason I would advocate against that is because that doesn't allow for flexibility. For example, hypothetically, removal of the line slide repair. Remove the line slide repair from this, if that happens to happen, changes the picture by $10 million. And, so until we have further discovery about which of these projects are going to proceed, we should keep them on the list and we should move forward with staff's recommendation.
Yeah, I still think there's a lot of
What we need to
variables, like
do,
are we
what we
gonna
need
get
to do is we
grants
need to be
or
sending the capital projects to the engineering
FEMA
committee
money.
so that we can actually have a discussion and do prioritization of what the projects really need to be, which the engineering committee was not involved with during this budget process.
We're going to talk about the water tanks at the next engineering committee meeting. And so I want to get it before we consider the motion in front of us. I want to get any public comment on this. We have nobody from our public community here in the meeting with us in person. I do see one online. Karen Vitale, you wanted to comment on this.
Yes, I'm finding the discussions rather disturbing, honestly, because I'm looking at a capital improvement budget that supposedly was done with outreach to the community, and yet it doesn't seem that somehow I ever learned that there was this process going on or outreach going on, and there. I don't see that we've had an opportunity to do the prioritization or to have the ad hoc committee on consolidation discuss what the discussions we've been having are and what the findings are and what the recommendations are. But all of a sudden, capital improvement, the CIP plan doesn't include anything beyond the phase one. So I think the whole process, especially related to the capital improvement side, is very confused. Didn't we, or didn't all of you, several months ago, like in the last year September timeframe, go through a prioritization of projects, and how did that fit into this document that's out there? I mean, it just feels, I don't know. I just feel like somehow or another, you have a letter of intent that's still in place with Brackenbury and Forest Springs. We've had some discussions here and there, but I don't really know where that's going. And then we're not on the capital improvement plan. And I get it. There's no money, but there's no money for a lot of other things that are on that plan. So what is this? A list, a wish list, a shopping list, an aspirations list? It's certainly not a budget. And I think that I do see some real problems with this as a community member. I don't see that you should just lop off 3 years of your budget without thinking hard about what actually matters to the future of the district. And I'm not even talking about consolidation of new customers that are not even in the district as of today, other than commercial water buyers. I think you need to be thinking about what really matters. And I think you guys are a dedicated group of people that come here and do a rather thankless task. I'm sure you have a sense of that, and your engineers can tell you what's about to fall apart and that has to be addressed whether you want to spend that money or not. It just feels like the process is broken. So my apologies for being so open and frank about about being critical here, but it just doesn't seem to be working. And where is consolidation in all of this? Where are the discussions that we were going to have?
As I indicated to you, Karen, in a one-on-one conversation,
Yeah.
I did intend to put together a status of consolidations. I've been working with Bob on summarizing all of that, and I intend at a near future board meeting to present that as an item to update the board and the general public with where we are on consolidations.
Yeah,
I'm
it seems
to go into it any further.
well, yeah, it seems pretty clear from looking at the capital improvement plan that decisions have been made. So that is the difficulty I'm having with all of this, and in a process that involved outreach, which doesn't outreach to whom? So Bob, Bob and Mark, we've worked hard together to try to make this consolidation actually happen. And, and we understand the reality of the funding hurdle you're trying to overcome here, and we get that we're not a disadvantaged community. But I think we at least need to be talking here again.
I've already told you what I can, Karen, on the consolidations. I intend to come back at a subsequent meeting with that. I'm not prepared to do that this evening. It's not on the agenda.
May I say one thing?
Sure.
Karen, this CIP list was created by all the department heads sitting down and talking about it and coming up with this list. And then this list went to, I think, every single committee. So all the committees got to see it. I think maybe it was environmental was the only one that didn't see it.
We brought it to environment.
Did you bring it to
Yeah.
environmental too? Okay. So I think every single committee, and so the public was welcome to come in and comment at those times. Maybe it's not the best outreach that we could have done, but we had committee members in each of those all commenting on this and kind of narrowing down this CIP list. And then as far as I think the funding, as far as Bracken Brain Forest Springs consolidation, I don't want to speak out of turn, but as far as phase one, that's what the district has committed, and trying to ask our customers to pay beyond that and to include that in our CIP right now would get really tricky. So that is something that's going to have to come from another funding source. And so that maybe that's possibly why it's missing off of the next fiscal years.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining to me what your process was. That is very reassuring with regard to talking with your department heads and in the committee. So it's likely that it's my ignorance and not knowing to check those committee agendas carefully to see if something like this is coming along that might have potential impact on us. I guess fundamentally, what I see is you have a CIP budget. Is there also somewhere a written document that's a strategy and a prioritization? And then that is where you talk about what you'd like to get done that may be not yet budgeted, that would be added to a budget amendment that was done next year or as an unbudgeted or something like that. I mean, is that the process? Is there some other process that gets us at least listed somewhere?
All of the discussions were held in these various public meetings that that Heather put on the screen in front of us. And no, there is no other written prioritization document that we have as far as a guideline.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, I know I've taken way more than my 3 minutes, but I'm sorry. I'm just really confused by the process here, and frankly a little disturbed. I know that, Mark, we definitely have been working well. I don't have a problem with that. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
If I could just say one thing,
Sure.
which is just that I look forward to a time when I believe the narrative articulation of the overall strategy is what in my organization we call a work plan. And I look forward to having clear work plans and articulated strategies. I think having a general manager hired will contribute to that substantially. And I think having a finance director hired will help organize that from a fiscal and budgetary perspective.
Okay. Seeing no other members from the public wishing to comment, I want to make a motion that the board adopt a resolution approving the budget for fiscal years 2025, 26, and 26, 27.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you.
And President Smalley,
Yes.
Vice President Lang,
Yes.
Chair Warday,
Yes.
and Director Foltz.
No.
Okay. Board has heard my opinion on the other part of this motion. Does anybody want to?
I didn't realize it wasn't matching up. And if you're saying that, I'd like to take a better look at all of that. It is kind of like hard to read in that how it's lined up.
I am grateful that this is included in the budget process and kind of the annual approval process. I recognize that that's a new practice for the district, and that there's some potential for discontinuity between what we're seeing here and what staff, as I understand, might be recommending. However, what I would envision is that the general manager should get on, envision the team that that they want to lead, talk to senior staff, go through a process of reorganizing the org chart as appropriate, and then bringing forward a new org chart that would affect this Exhibit A. That's what I would expect. I would expect that could take several months to do justice to, because staffing your team and the org chart is one of the most important parts of being a leader of the organization. I perhaps there is value in approving this on the interim basis now, and then revisiting it at the request of the general manager in a few months. That's the only thing I can come up with.
And I see that Bob wants to comment on this also. Bob?
Yeah, I don't, given that we haven't done this in the past, while I think it might be valuable to do in the future, I don't see any value in doing it now. I would like to have our general manager have as much flexibility in, as Brian was saying, how he wants to organize and staff. And I think this resolution, if passed, is where the board starts reaching its hand into that process in a way that, given he hasn't had a chance to be a part of that process, I don't think it's appropriate at this time.
Okay. The only board member that I'm hearing possible on this from is you, Brian. Do you wish to make a motion?
No, I find everyone else's thoughts on this persuasive.
Okay. All right. Then I think we've concluded that item this evening. Next up is the Lion Access Road Slide repairs.
Thank you, President Smalley and directors, for the opportunity to present the current status of the Lion Access Road Slide. Disastrous winter storms in 2017 resulted in more than 94 inches of rainfall in the San Lorenzo Valley, which is almost double our average precipitation. The rainfall triggered a large landslide, damaging the district's access road to the Lion Water Treatment Plant, our 3 million gallon Lion tank, and our 250,000 gallon Little Lion tank. The landslide reactivated in the 2023 storms, damaging temporary repairs over the landslide. Staff has made additional temporary repairs on top of the active landslide to maintain access to the critical facilities at our Lion complex. However, the condition of the road continues to deteriorate, and the active landslide is a potential liability for the district should a large soil mass mobilize and impact neighboring properties. The district is currently working with an engineering design firm to develop a new access road that bypasses the landslide. The preliminary plans are included in the agenda packet. The proposed new access road has a couple of issues. The main one being the construction cost is currently estimated to be more than $8 million, but the engineering design of the required retaining walls is not complete. The engineering firm has requested $200,000 to complete the engineering design of the retaining walls. Portions of the new access road require a single retaining wall, and portions of the new access road require double retaining walls. The retaining walls are required because the proposed access road is located on a 50% slope. The proposed access road is designed with a 20% grade, which is a very steep road. The Santa Cruz County road standards specify grades not exceeding 15%, with up to a 20% maximum grade for no longer than 200 feet. It's also recommended that we would provide turnouts, turnarounds, and we might encounter other compliance issues with building a new access road. The main problem I see with the new access road is that it does not address the active landslide. Staff is requesting direction from the board to stop work on the engineering design of the new access road and to start work on the engineering design of repairs to the existing Lion access road. And with that, I'll take any questions you have.
Okay. And just to clarify, Garrett, you're bringing this to us because at a previous board meeting years ago, board directed staff to proceed on this path to develop new roadway.
Correct. And staff has included that in the proposed budget.
Right. And that's been the direction. And until the board makes a decision on your recommendation here, that's the path you're headed down.
Correct. We are proceeding with the new access road at this time.
Right. Okay. All right. Then the engineering committee has discussed this to some degree at this point. And I believe, or I've walked the area and I believe Bob has also, the proposed route for this new access road. I don't see that it's going to be drivable. Plus, the 8 million that you have is only a part of the cost. The retaining walls, as you're pointing out, are going to be significant additional increases to it. So, I'm of the opinion, go seek another alternative. Stop work on the access road. Bob, since you and I have talked about this in the engineering committee, your thoughts?
Yeah, the primary concerns that I had about not doing anything more comprehensive, I guess, with the original proposal, which is to put a bunch of retaining walls or secant walls in at a cost of 30-some million, was whether or not there would be any danger to the houses downhill from this in the event of a catastrophic landslide. I'm not sure that we got a concrete answer, but but I think the answer was, well, probably not. And so, Garrett, do we have any updated information on that?
So I provided a figure in the attachments that shows the area and shows elevations of neighboring properties.
Yep.
We can have the geotechnical engineer run an analysis of the slide to determine the extent of where he believes that material would end up.
Yep.
In conversations with the geotechnical engineer, he said it's most likely that the material would enter the creek and possibly impact the waterway.
Yeah.
But less likely that it would impact the houses.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I think we're at, because I'm mostly concerned about initially loss of property, loss of life in the event of a catastrophic landslide. Then secondarily, obviously blocking the creek would be environmentally bad, but I don't want anybody's property or life to be hurt first. So that was one of the considerations on stopping any more comprehensive work in this and doing something maybe a little less comprehensive. The other question I had is, if we don't fix it now with FEMA money, because it is eligible for FEMA money, not that we get paid very quickly, as Heather's budget pointed out, do we lose the ability to get FEMA funds in the future should this slide again more catastrophically than just a slip out? And I believe the answer we got on that was also we would still be under current law, we would still be able to be eligible for FEMA funding in that situation. So given those two answers, it seemed reasonable to me to not proceed with a comprehensive solution. And like Mark, I don't see that the road in the alternative location being anything that we would want to do. I know that was something that one of our previous general managers was advocating for. You know, in hindsight, it seems like we probably should have done a little bit more feasibility work in that prior to adopting his recommendation.
Correct. And it's this alternate roadway that's in front of us. The bigger
Yep.
picture questions that you're asking, Bob, that's not what the memo is asking us to address.
No, I get that, but it's within the context of if we don't do this, what do we do?
Right.
Right, and I want to make sure that people understand that if we don't do this, we're still not facing catastrophic issues by doing nothing,
Right. Yes.
or by doing something that's more cosmetic, which I think will be what the solution is.
So, Bob, I would like to say that currently FEMA has approved a change in scope of work for the new access road. So when we originally had the damage in 2017, we had a FEMA application, and that was to, as you indicated, install secant pile walls. At the time, it was 2019, the geotechnical report indicated 3 to 4 million per wall, and the estimate was approximately 15 million to stabilize the landslide. And now that was going to be a FEMA project.
Mm-hmm.
We went to FEMA and said, we don't want to do the $15 million secant pile walls. What we want to do is build a new access road at a different location at approximately half the cost of around $8 million. FEMA has approved that change in scope of work. So if we are no longer going to pursue the new access road, we have to go back to FEMA and say, we want to change the scope of work again.
Yep.
I want to go back to.
Yeah, I understand that, Garrett, and that it will be even less money, given that the scope of work will probably be substantially less as well.
Correct.
Yeah, and
Yes.
they would have to approve that. The danger is they may say, well, you know, we're not going to approve anything because, you know, you're 8 years after and budgets are tight.
Yep.
We're busy with LA and Tennessee.
Yep.
That
Yes.
is a possibility.
Yeah.
But the motion in front of us tonight is, do we have the engineering staff continue with the engineering work on this alternate roadway?
Correct.
Right.
But Mark, I mean, I understand you're trying to narrow it, but in order to make this decision, we need to make sure that at least I'm comfortable with the fact that what happens if it slides? Do we lose our ability to get FEMA funding in the future? And is there a possibility that we'll lose FEMA funding altogether, even for the something smaller? And so I wanted to make sure those questions got out there and Garrett had a chance to address them.
And I expect that at a future engineering committee meeting, we're going to be getting some of this information at that level with.
Yes, there's no information that will be withheld from the committee or the board.
Yeah,
of course.
And kind of your general plan or approach on what you're, if we're not doing this roadway, what are you thinking and what are your engineering consultants thinking we could do instead that's short of the 15 million? Yeah, okay. So for what's in front of us tonight, Alina?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard for a long time why this alternate road is the best idea. So I was a little surprised to see this on the agenda. Like we're flipping back. I mean, you are the best person to know what to do in this situation, and so I am just going to trust your judgment that you think that this is that we need to stop working on the new access road. So,
and I would say this is in consultation with the geotechnical engineer.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well. All right. Yes. I put my trust in you guys.
Right.
Yeah, I'm comfortable deferring to the experts on this. I don't have any reason to question their recommendation, and I'm comfortable with abandonment of the new access road strategy.
Okay. Anybody from the public want to comment on this item? Seeing none, I move that the board of directors direct staff to stop work on the engineering design of the new access road for the Lion Slide and start work on engineering the design of repairs to the existing Lion access road.
Second.
Okay.
President Smalley,
Yes.
Vice President Lee,
Yes.
Director Large,
Yep.
and Director Foltz.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on then, we have one item on the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull that? Seeing none, I consider that item approved by unanimous vote. District reports. We have the monthly finance report. Does anybody want to ask questions about that? Seeing none.
Mark, sorry, I had to click. Yeah,
You were slow.
I know, but no.
Go ahead, Bob.
What can I say? Yeah, I wanted to thank Heather for engaging in a conversation about how to present the difference between a strict accounting view of our unrestricted funds and by policy what really is unrestricted as of this time, and also a brief discussion about what a reasonable reserve policy may be. Heather, I think, went really far in that, and I'm really happy to see that there's a note in there that basically clarifies this in at least a way that maybe we make the note highlighted in blue or something to bring it out. But I hope people can see that right now our unrestricted cash really isn't that unrestricted, given we want to have a reserve of some significant amount to be able to deal with the disasters that we've had, including the disaster of rampant inflation over the last 5 or 6 years since this policy was originally put in place. Now, whether 11 million is the right number or not, we can debate that at a future time, but that 12.3 million is not available to the board to spend as of right now. It's, as Heather points out, more like 1 million. So thanks, Heather, for doing that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. I see no other questions from board on that. And the information or written communication, there is one item on there. I don't see anybody wanting to comment on that. With that, we can adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Nice.
Thank you, CTV.